The scream tore through the night like broken glass. "Mommy!" People turned. Cars screeched to a stop. Phones dropped from hands. On the cold concrete floor of the hospital parking lot, a young man lay flat on his back, blood spreading under him, his eyes wide and empty, staring at nothing. A woman knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she pressed them hard against his chest, crying so loudly it felt like her heart was being ripped out. "It wasn't supposed to end like this," she kept whispering. "Please, please wake up." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Standing a few steps away was a boy, no more than 10 years old. His small body trembled as he watched his father dying in front of him. His lips shook, but no sound came out anymore. He had already screamed until his voice broke. Across the parking lot, under the yellow streetlight, another woman stood frozen. Her face was pale. Her mouth hung open in shock. Her hands were pressed to her chest like she could not breathe, because she knew this moment was coming. She just never thought it would happen this way. And as the dying man's eyes slowly lost their light, his fingers twitched one last time, pointing weakly toward her, toward the woman who destroyed everything. Then his hand fell, flat, still. A long, sharp cry rose from the woman on the ground as doctors finally rushed in too late. And the boy screamed again. That scream would never leave the ears of everyone who heard it. But this story did not begin in a hospital parking lot. It began many years earlier, with a promise that was meant to last forever. Years before that night, Marcus Johnson was a different man. He was kind, hard-working, the kind of man who woke up early every morning, said a short prayer, kissed his wife on the forehead, and went out to face the world with hope. Marcus grew up in a small neighborhood in Atlanta. Life was not easy, but his mother taught him one thing he never forgot. "Your name is all you have," she would say. "Protect it." When Marcus met Naomi Brown, he believed he had found his forever. Naomi was gentle, soft-spoken, and warm. She laughed with her whole face. She worked as a caregiver, helping elderly people who had no one. She believed deeply in love, loyalty, and patience. They met at a community event organized by their church. Marcus noticed her first because she stayed behind after everyone left, helping clean up without being asked. He walked over and said, "You didn't have to do that." She smiled and said, "I know. I just wanted to." That smile stayed in his mind for weeks. They started talking, then dating, then praying together. When Marcus proposed, he did not have much money, just a simple ring and a big promise. "I may not have everything now," he told her, "but I will always choose you." Naomi cried and said yes. Their wedding was small, but full of joy. Family, friends, laughter, music. No expensive decorations. Just love. For a while, life was good. Marcus worked in logistics. Naomi continued caregiving. They rented a small apartment and talked about dreams. Children, a bigger home, a better future. But life has a way of testing promises. After 2 years, Naomi still had no child. At first, it was just quiet concern. Then it became whispers. Some family members started asking questions. "Are you sure everything is okay? Have you seen a doctor?" Others were not so gentle. "A woman's pride is in her womb," one aunt said during a visit. Naomi laughed it off in public. But at night, she cried quietly into her pillow so Marcus would not hear. Marcus tried to be supportive. "It's okay," he would say. "We have time." But pressure grew. Bills increased. His job became stressful. Promotions went to others. Slowly, Marcus changed. Not all at once. Bit by bit. Then a new woman entered his life. Her name was Angela. Angela worked in the same company as Marcus. She was bold, confident, always dressed sharp, always speaking loudly. She laughed at his jokes and listened closely when he complained. "You deserve better," she would tell him. "You work too hard to be stuck." At first, Marcus resisted. He went home every night. He prayed. He reminded himself of his vows. But temptation is patient. One late evening, after a long argument with Naomi about money, Marcus stayed back at work. Angela stayed too. They talked. They drank. They crossed a line they could never erase. Marcus told himself it was a mistake, but mistakes repeated become choices. Soon, Angela was pregnant. When she told Marcus, his world shook. "What about your wife?" she asked him. He said nothing. That silence changed everything. Angela wanted a future. Naomi wanted honesty. Marcus wanted peace without sacrifice. And so, instead of fixing his marriage, Marcus ran. He grew distant at home. Cold, sharp. Naomi felt it but could not explain it. One evening, Marcus sat her down. "I need space," he said. "For what?" Naomi asked. "To think." She nodded, trusting him. That trust would cost her everything. Weeks later, Marcus moved out. Then came the truth. Angela showed up one afternoon, unannounced. Naomi opened the door. Angela looked her up and down and said, "I'm pregnant with your husband's child." The floor felt like it vanished beneath Naomi's feet. Marcus did not deny it. He packed the rest of his things that same night. "I'm sorry," he said, not looking her in the eyes. Naomi watched the man she built her life around walk away. Alone, broken. Time passed. Angela gave birth to a boy. They named him Ethan. Marcus tried to build a new life, but guilt followed him like a shadow. Naomi disappeared from his world. He assumed she moved on. He was wrong, because Naomi did not disappear. She endured. She rebuilt. She changed. Years later, fate would bring all of them back together in a way no one expected, and it would end in blood, truth, and a lesson no one would ever forget. But before that tragic night in the hospital parking lot, something else happened, something that set everything in motion, something Marcus never saw coming, and something Naomi had been carrying silently for years. If this story is already touching you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Stories like this carry deep lessons worth sharing, so please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And one question before we continue. What would you have done if you were in Naomi's place? Would you have walked away quietly or fought back in your own way? Share your thoughts below. Naomi did not die when Marcus left. That surprised her more than anything else. In the first weeks after he moved out, she truly believed she would not survive the pain. Every morning, she woke up expecting her chest to explode from the weight sitting on it. Every night, she slept with the lights on because the silence scared her. The apartment felt haunted. Every corner reminded her of something they once shared. The couch where they laughed. The kitchen where they cooked together. The bed that now felt like a punishment. She stopped answering calls. She stopped going to church. She stopped smiling. But life did not stop. Bills still came. Rent was still due. Food still had to be bought. One morning, after 3 days of barely eating, Naomi stood in front of the mirror and did not recognize the woman staring back at her. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair was messy. Her shoulders were slumped like someone twice her age. She whispered to her reflection, "If I stay like this, I will disappear." That was the moment something inside her shifted. Not healed, not forgiven, but awakened. Naomi went back to work full-time. She picked extra shifts caring for her elderly patients. Some days were physically exhausting, but the emotional pain slowly turned into quiet determination. She learned to survive alone. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. One of her patients, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, an elderly African-American woman in her late 70s, asked Naomi to sit beside her. "You're hurting," Mrs. Carter said softly. Naomi froze. "I'm fine." Mrs. Carter smiled gently. "No, baby, you're standing. That's not the same thing as being fine." Naomi broke down. She told her everything. The marriage, the betrayal, the child, the shame. Mrs. Carter listened without interrupting. When Naomi finished, the old woman reached out and held her hand. "Pain can either bury you," she said, "or build you. The choice won't come today, but it will come." Naomi carried those words with her. Months passed. Marcus, meanwhile, tried to convince himself he was happy. Angela moved fast. She wanted marriage. She wanted control. She reminded Marcus daily that he chose her. But something was wrong. Angela was sharp-tongued, easily angered, quick to remind him of his past mistakes. "You left your wife for me," she would say whenever they argued. "Don't forget that." Marcus loved his son deeply. Ethan was a light in his life. But the relationship with Angela felt like walking on broken glass. Still, Marcus stayed, because guilt is powerful, because pride is louder than regret, because it was easier to stay than admit he destroyed something good. Years passed. Ethan grew into a bright, curious boy. And then one day, Naomi saw Marcus again. It happened at a grocery store. She was standing in the cereal aisle when she heard a familiar laugh. Her heart stopped. She turned slowly. Marcus stood a few feet away, holding Ethan's hand. He looked older, thinner, tired. Their eyes met. Time froze. Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. Naomi nodded politely, picked up her basket, and walked away. She did not cry. She did not shake. She walked out with her dignity intact. That night, Naomi sat on her bed and laughed quietly to herself, not because it was funny, but because she realized something important. She had moved on. What she did not know was that life was preparing a test far greater than seeing her ex-husband in a grocery store. Because shortly after that encounter, Naomi received news that changed everything. A routine medical check turned into a shocking discovery, one that explained years of pain, one that rewrote her story, and one that would eventually bring Marcus back into her life in the most painful way imaginable. But first, Naomi had a choice to make, and the choice she made would echo all the way to that hospital parking lot. If this chapter is speaking to you, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Stories like this grow stronger when shared, so send it to someone who may need this lesson. We want to hear from you. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a deep betrayal? What gave you the strength to keep going? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The doctor closed the file slowly and looked up at Naomi with a careful expression. "Mrs. Brown," he said, "there has been a mistake." Naomi's fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. What kind of mistake? The room smelled of disinfectant and cold air. She had come in expecting nothing serious. Just another routine check. Another quick visit. Another reminder that her body had failed her in the one way everyone seemed to judge her for. But the doctor's eyes told her this was different. "For years," he continued, choosing his words carefully, "you were told that pregnancy would be very difficult for you, possibly impossible. That diagnosis was wrong." Naomi's breath caught. "Wrong how?" He turned the screen toward her. "You had a condition, fibroids. They were treatable. No one followed up properly. No one explained your options." The room began to spin. "So you're saying," Naomi whispered, "I could have had children?" "Yes," the doctor said gently. "With treatment, yes." Naomi did not cry. Not at first. She walked out of the clinic, sat in her car, and stared at the steering wheel for a long time. Her hands were steady. Her face was calm. Then something inside her broke open. She screamed. She screamed until her throat burned and tears soaked her clothes. She screamed for the years lost, for the marriage that died under a lie, for the life she was denied without ever knowing she had a choice. Marcus left because he believed she could not give him a child, because she believed it too, because no one bothered to look deeper. That night, Naomi did not sleep. She sat on her bed and replayed everything, every argument, every silence, every moment she blamed herself. By morning, the pain had turned into something sharper. Resolve. She went through treatment, surgery, recovery. It was not easy. There were days she wanted to give up, but she pushed forward. And then, 2 years later, the impossible happened. Naomi got pregnant. When the test showed 2 lines, she stared at it like it might disappear as she blinked. She was 38 years old, single, working long hours. But she was not afraid. For the first time in her life, she felt complete. She named her daughter Grace. Grace became her world. Naomi poured every ounce of love into raising her. She worked harder, studied part-time, and eventually moved into healthcare administration. She spoke publicly about misdiagnosis and women's health. Her voice grew stronger. Her confidence returned. People listened. Meanwhile, Marcus's life continued to crack. Angela grew bitter. Arguments became louder. Love turned into blame. Ethan saw more than any child should. Then one afternoon, Marcus received a phone call that froze his blood. Ethan had collapsed at school. They rushed him to the hospital. Diagnosis came quickly. A rare heart condition. He needed surgery. Expensive surgery. Marcus did not have the money. Angela screamed at doctors. Cried. Blamed Marcus. But the truth was simple. They were running out of time. And that was when fate stepped in. Naomi was attending a healthcare fundraiser when she heard the name, Ethan Johnson. The case caught her attention. The condition, the urgency. Then she saw Marcus's name listed as the emergency contact. Her heart stopped. She went home that night shaken. She told herself it was not her problem, that she owed Marcus nothing. But then she looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully, and she remembered the boy in the grocery store, the child who did not choose his parents' mistakes. The next morning, Naomi made a decision, one that would change all their lives. She reached out. When Marcus answered the call and heard her voice, he dropped the phone. He never expected to hear from her again. What he did not know was that Naomi was not calling for revenge. She was calling an offer to expose every lie, every regret, and every hidden truth. And it would lead them all straight back to that hospital parking lot, where forgiveness and consequences would collide. If this story is moving you, please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Sharing this story might help someone learn a powerful lesson. Now tell us in the comments. Have you ever discovered a truth too late that changed how you saw your past? What would you have done in Naomi's position at this point? Marcus sat on the edge of the hospital bed with his head in his hands. The room was quiet except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor beside Ethan's bed. Tubes ran from the small boy's body to machines Marcus barely understood. Ethan's chest rose and fell slowly, his face pale, his eyelashes resting softly against his cheeks. Marcus had never felt fear like this before. Not when he left Naomi. Not when Angela screamed at him in anger. Not even when money disappeared faster than it came in. This fear was different. This fear felt final. The doctor had been clear. Without surgery, Ethan's condition would worsen. Time was not on their side. The cost was more than Marcus could raise, even if he sold everything he owned. Angela paced the hallway outside, shouting into her phone, calling relatives, old friends, anyone who might help. Most promised prayers. Some did not answer at all. Marcus felt useless. Then his phone rang. Naomi. He stared at the screen like it was a ghost. When he finally answered, his voice shook. Naomi, I heard about Ethan, she said quietly. Marcus swallowed hard. How? I work in healthcare, she replied. His case crossed my desk. Silence filled the space between them. I'm sorry, Marcus said at last. I never meant for any of this to happen. Naomi did not respond immediately. When she spoke again, her voice was calm, controlled. I want to help, she said. Marcus's breath caught. Help how? I can cover part of the surgery cost, Naomi said, and help you connect with the right specialist. Marcus stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. Why would you do that? Naomi's pause was long. Because a child is involved, she said. And because I know what it feels like to lose something precious without understanding why. Tears filled Marcus's eyes. He pressed the phone to his ear, ashamed. Thank you, he whispered. I don't deserve this. No, Naomi said. You don't, but Ethan does. When Naomi arrived at the hospital later that day, Marcus barely recognized her. She looked confident, strong, grounded, nothing like the broken woman he left behind. And beside her was a little girl, Grace. Marcus noticed her first because of her eyes. They were bright, curious, full of life. This is my daughter, Naomi said simply. Marcus's heart skipped. Your daughter? Naomi nodded. Yes. Angela appeared just then, her face tight with suspicion. She looked from Naomi to Grace, then to Marcus. And who is this? Angela asked sharply. Naomi met her gaze without fear. I'm Marcus's former wife. Angela laughed bitterly. Of course you are. Marcus felt the tension rise like heat. Grace stepped closer to Naomi and held her hand. Angela's eyes narrowed. Is that his child? No, Naomi said firmly. She is mine. But the question lingered in the air. Later that night, as Ethan slept and Angela stormed out after another argument, Marcus found Naomi sitting alone in the waiting area. I didn't know, he said quietly, about your condition, about everything. Naomi looked straight ahead. No, you didn't, but you also didn't ask. Marcus flinched. I blamed myself for years, Naomi continued. I thought I was broken. I thought I failed you. Marcus's voice cracked. I failed you. Naomi turned to face him. We both failed in different ways. For a moment, they sat in silence. Then Naomi stood. The paperwork is done. Ethan will get the surgery. Marcus stood too, overwhelmed. I'll pay you back. Somehow. Naomi shook her head. This is not alone. It's a choice. Marcus watched her walk away, Grace skipping beside her. What he did not see was Angela standing at the end of the hallway, listening, watching. Her eyes burned with jealousy, fear, and something darker. That night, Angela made a decision of her own, one that would turn gratitude into resentment, one that would twist kindness into tragedy. And slowly, silently, the road to that hospital parking lot began to form. Angela did not sleep that night. She lay on the couch in the small apartment she shared with Marcus, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the hospital over and over again. Naomi's calm voice, her confident walk, the way Marcus looked at her like he was seeing a miracle instead of a woman. And that child, Grace. Angela turned to face the wall, her jaw tight. For years, she had told herself she won. She had the man. She had the child. She had the life Naomi lost. But that illusion shattered the moment Naomi walked into that hospital. Angela felt something ugly crawl up from deep inside her chest. Fear. What if Marcus still loved her? What if this woman, the one he abandoned, now had everything Angela struggled to keep together? The next morning, Ethan was taken in for surgery. The hours dragged like years. Marcus paced. Naomi sat quietly with Grace, reading her a book in a low, gentle voice. Nurses passed by, some greeting Naomi by name. She was clearly respected. Angela watched from a distance. When the surgeon finally came out, his expression was tired but relieved. The surgery was successful, he said. Marcus collapsed into a chair, sobbing openly. Naomi closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of thanks. Grace smiled, not fully understanding, but happy because the adults looked relieved. Angela forced a smile. Inside, something hardened. As days passed, Ethan recovered slowly. Naomi visited less often, giving Marcus space. She made sure everything was set in place, medical follow-ups, financial coverage, support contacts, then stepped back. Marcus noticed her absence. He missed her presence more than he wanted to admit. One afternoon, while Ethan slept, Marcus asked quietly, "Can we talk?" Naomi nodded. They walked outside to a small garden area behind the hospital. "I owe you my son's life," Marcus said. "I don't know how to live with that." Naomi looked at the flowers swaying in the breeze. "Then live better," she said. "That's all." Marcus swallowed. "Angela doesn't understand why you helped us." Naomi gave a small smile. "That's okay. Understanding isn't required for kindness." But Angela did not see it as kindness. She saw it as a threat. Days later, Marcus came home early and found Angela sitting at the table, scrolling angrily through her phone. "You still talk to her," Angela accused. "She's helping Ethan." Marcus replied calmly. "She's trying to take you back," Angela snapped. Marcus shook his head. "No, she's moved on. I'm the one who hasn't." That sentence landed like a slap. Angela stood up slowly. "So you admit it?" "Admit what?" Marcus asked. "That you regret choosing me." Silence. Marcus did not answer. Angela laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think because she has money now, because she has a child, she's better than me? That's not what I said. But that's what you feel. Angela grabbed her keys and stormed out. That night, she drove aimlessly, anger boiling over. Her mind replayed the past, twisting it until she felt justified. She remembered how Marcus once promised her a future, how he chose her, how she believed that meant she was special. Now she felt disposable. And people who feel disposable sometimes do dangerous things to prove they still matter. The next day, Angela showed up at Naomi's workplace. Unannounced. Naomi was surprised but remained calm. "We need to talk," Angela said. Naomi nodded. "Okay." They sat across from each other in a quiet office. "I know what you're trying to do," Angela said coldly. Naomi frowned. "I'm not trying to do anything. You're inserting yourself back into Marcus's life," Angela said. "Using money, using sympathy." Naomi's eyes hardened slightly. "I'm helping a child, not chasing a man." Angela leaned forward. "Then stay away from us." Naomi stood. "I already am." Angela left feeling unsatisfied because she did not get the reaction she wanted, and that made her more desperate. Weeks later, Ethan was discharged. Life tried to return to normal, but something was wrong. Marcus started noticing strange things. Angela was distant, secretive, not herself. Then one evening, Marcus came home to find Ethan crying. Angela was yelling. "Stop acting weak," she shouted at the boy. Marcus stepped in. "What's going on?" Angela spun around. "He keeps asking about Naomi." Marcus froze. Ethan wiped his tears. "She was nice to me," he said softly. She didn't shout. The room went quiet. Angela's face changed. That was the moment Marcus realized something terrifying. He had made a mistake bigger than he ever understood. And somewhere in the city, Naomi felt a sudden, unexplainable heaviness in her chest, as if something terrible was moving closer. Slowly, unstoppably, Marcus did not confront Angela that night. He wanted to. Every part of him burned to demand answers, to protect his son, to finally draw a line he should have drawn years ago. But fear stopped him. Fear of another fight. Fear of what Angela might do. Fear of admitting out loud that the life he chose was broken beyond repair. So he stayed quiet. But silence does not fix danger. It feeds it. Over the next few weeks, Marcus began to notice patterns he could no longer ignore. Angela snapped easily. Her mood shifted without warning. She monitored his phone. She asked too many questions about Naomi. And Ethan changed. The boy became quieter. He flinched at Ray's voices. He clung to Marcus more tightly than before. At night, he sometimes cried in his sleep. One evening, as Marcus tucked him in, Ethan whispered, "Dad, am I bad?" Marcus's heart cracked. "No, son. Why would you think that?" Ethan hesitated. "Mommy says I make people leave." Marcus felt a cold rush move through his body. "No," he said firmly, pulling Ethan close. "That is not true. You did nothing wrong." But the words came too late. Damage does not always show itself immediately. Meanwhile, Naomi sensed a shift before she understood it. Grace began asking questions. Why did that boy look sad? Why does he live in a hospital? Why was the lady angry? Naomi answered gently, carefully. She kept her distance, just as she promised. She focused on her work, her child, her quiet rebuilding. But one afternoon, as she was leaving her office, she noticed a car parked across the street. The engine was running. The windows were tinted. Something about it felt wrong. The car drove away when she stopped walking. Naomi brushed it off. She told herself she was being paranoid. She was wrong. Angela's fear had turned into obsession. She began watching Naomi's routines. Her workplace, her schedule, Grace's school pickup times. Not because she wanted to hurt them. At least, not at first. She wanted proof. Proof that Naomi was still a threat. Proof that Marcus still cared. One evening, Marcus finally said what he could no longer hold inside. "This isn't working," he told Angela quietly. Angela froze. What do you mean? I mean, this house is not safe anymore, he said. For Ethan, for any of us. Angela's eyes widened. So now you're choosing her. No, Marcus said. I'm choosing my son. Angela laughed, but tears spilled down her face. You think she's a saint. You think she's better than me. She's not perfect, Marcus replied, but she's not cruel. That word hit Angela like fire. Cruel. She slapped him. The sound echoed through the room. Ethan screamed from the bedroom. Marcus stepped back, stunned. Angela stared at her hand like she didn't recognize it. That night, Marcus packed a bag for Ethan. We're staying with my brother for a while, he said. Angela blocked the door. If you leave, don't come back. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he opened the door anyway. Angela watched them walk out, and something inside her finally snapped. The next day, Naomi received a call. It was from the school. Grace was not there. Naomi's heart stopped. She was picked up early, the receptionist said, by a woman who said she was family. Naomi dropped her phone. She knew. She knew exactly who it was. Her hands shook as she called Marcus. When he answered and heard Naomi's voice, panicked and breathless, his blood turned to ice. Angela took Grace, Naomi said. She took my daughter. Marcus did not think. He grabbed his keys and ran. Because in that moment, all the past mistakes, all the betrayals, all the silence came rushing back as one terrifying truth. Angela was no longer just angry. She was dangerous. And somewhere in the city, a little girl was sitting in the back seat of a moving car, clutching her backpack, wondering why her mother was not coming. The road ahead was speeding toward disaster, and no one knew how far Angela was willing to go. Naomi's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. She stood in the middle of the school parking lot, surrounded by parents picking up their children, laughter and chatter filling the air, while her own world collapsed in silence. Grace was gone. Not lost. Taken. Naomi pressed her palm against her chest, forcing herself to breathe. Panic begged her to scream, to run blindly, to fall apart. But another voice inside her, stronger, sharper, told her something else. Stay clear. Stay alive. Stay focused. Marcus arrived minutes later, his car skidding to a stop. He jumped out before the engine even fully died. Naomi, he said, his face drained of color. I'm so sorry. I swear I never thought. Save it, Naomi said, her voice trembling but controlled. Help me find my child. Marcus nodded, swallowing his guilt. We'll find her. They called the police. Time slowed into something painful and cruel. Officers asked questions. Forms were filled. Descriptions were repeated over and over. Female child, 6 years old. Curly hair. Pink backpack. Last seen at school pickup. Naomi felt like she was watching someone else's life. Then Marcus's phone rang. Angela. Marcus answered on speaker without thinking. Her voice came through calm. Too calm. If you want the girl, Angela said, come alone. Naomi's knees almost buckled. Marcus grabbed the phone. Where is she, Angela? She's fine, Angela replied. For now. Naomi reached for the phone. Let me speak to my daughter. There was a pause. Then a small voice came through. Mommy? Naomi broke. I'm here, baby, she cried. I'm coming. Don't be scared. Grace sniffed. The lady is crying too. The line went dead. Marcus slammed his fist into the side of the car. This is my fault. Naomi turned to him, her eyes blazing through tears. Blame later. Move now. They drove. The police followed at a distance, tracking the call. Angela led them on a twisted path through the city, highways, back roads, dark streets, like she wanted to stretch their fear as long as possible. Inside the car, Grace sat quietly. Angela kept glancing at her in the mirror. You know, Angela said suddenly, your mother thinks she's better than everyone. Grace hugged her backpack. My mommy is nice. Angela's lips trembled. So was I once. The word surprised even Angela herself. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. By the time they reached the hospital, The sky was dark. Angela pulled into the parking lot and stopped abruptly. "Get out," she said to Grace, her voice cracking. "Stay right here." Grace obeyed. Angela stepped out of the car, breathing hard, her chest tight. Sirens echoed in the distance. She looked at the building in front of her. The same hospital. The same place where everything began to slip from her hands. Marcus's car screeched in moments later. Naomi jumped out before it fully stopped. "Grace!" she screamed. Grace turned. Naomi ran, dropping to her knees and pulling her daughter into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "It's okay," Naomi whispered over and over. "It's okay. Mommy's here." Angela watched them, tears streaming down her face. Marcus stepped toward her slowly. "Angela, it's over. Please." Angela laughed weakly. "Over? You think this just ends?" Police cars surrounded the lot. Blue and red lights painted the walls. Angela backed away. "I gave you everything," she said to Marcus. "Everything." "And you took a child," Marcus replied, his voice breaking. "That's unforgivable." Angela's breathing grew uneven. Her vision blurred. Then suddenly, Ethan ran into the parking lot. "Daddy." Marcus turned, shocked. "Ethan, no. Stay back." The boy had followed his uncle's car, without anyone noticing. "Mommy is crying," Ethan said, confused and scared. Angela's face changed when she saw him. "Ethan," she whispered. She took a step toward him. Her foot slipped. The world tilted. Everything happened at once. Angela fell hard onto the concrete, hitting her head. The sound was sharp, final. Naomi screamed. Marcus ran. Blood pooled beneath Angela's head as she lay still, her eyes half open, staring at the night sky. Ethan began to cry. Sirens wailed louder. Doctors rushed out. People gathered. And in the chaos, as Angela was lifted onto a stretcher, her eyes fluttered open just once. She looked at Naomi, then at Marcus, then at Ethan, and with the last strength she had, she whispered words that froze Naomi to her core. She knew about the diagnosis before I did. Angela's eyes closed, and the truth slammed into Naomi like a wave. The hospital doors swung open, and the story raced full speed to her final revelation that would change how everyone understood the past. Forever. The hospital corridor smelled the same as it always did. Clean, cold, unforgiving. Naomi sat stiffly on a plastic chair, Grace asleep in her arms, exhausted from crying. Marcus sat across from her, his elbows on his knees, his head bowed, so low it looked like his spine might snap under the weight of everything pressing on him. Ethan sat beside his uncle, eyes red and swollen, feet not touching the floor. Behind the closed emergency room doors, doctors worked on Angela. Time passed in heavy silence. But Naomi's mind was not in the present. It was stuck on Angela's last words. She knew about the diagnosis before I did. Naomi's heart pounded painfully. She looked at Marcus. What did she mean? Marcus lifted his head slowly. His eyes were full of fear. I don't know, he said. Angela never said anything like that to me. Naomi swallowed hard. Marcus, think carefully. Did anyone ever talk to you years ago about my condition? Marcus frowned, searching his memory. Then his face changed. Slowly, horribly. There was a conversation, he said quietly. At work. Years back. A mutual friend. Someone whose sister worked at the same clinic you went to. Naomi's breath caught. And Marcus's voice trembled. He mentioned that sometimes results get mixed up, that some women are told the worst when it isn't true. I laughed it off. I didn't follow up. Naomi stared at him, disbelief washing over her. So the possibility existed, she whispered. And no one told me. No one checked. Marcus nodded, tears spilling freely now. I was angry. I was selfish. I didn't want hope. I wanted an excuse. The emergency room doors opened. A doctor stepped out. Angela's alive, he said, but she has a serious head injury. She's unconscious. The next 24 hours will tell us more. Ethan let out a small sob of relief. Marcus closed his eyes. Naomi felt no relief. only a deep, aching sadness. Hours later, a police officer approached them. "There's something you both need to know," he said gently. "We recovered Angela's phone. There are messages, emails, records." Naomi's stomach dropped. Angela had known. Not fully at first, but enough. She had stumbled onto the truth years earlier through gossip and half-information, and instead of pushing Marcus to confirm it, she buried it. Because if Naomi might one day have a child, then Angela's victory was not complete. She chose silence. She chose selfishness. She chose destruction. Marcus covered his face and cried openly in the hallway, not caring who saw him. "I destroyed my own life," he sobbed, "and everyone else's." Naomi watched him, and in that moment, something unexpected happened. The anger she carried for years loosened its grip, not because what Marcus did was small, but because holding on to it any longer would poison what little peace she had left. She stood up slowly. "I forgive you," she said. Marcus looked up sharply. "Naomi, not for you," she continued. "For me and for our children." Marcus nodded, broken. Angela never fully recovered. She survived, but the sharpness she once carried faded. The woman who woke up weeks later was quiet, fragile, forced to face the damage she caused. She went to prison, not out of cruelty, but out of consequence. Ethan went to live with Marcus's brother, under close care and counseling. Marcus visited often, learning how to be a father the right way this time. Present, gentle, honest. Naomi returned home with Grace. Life did not suddenly become perfect, but it became real. Grace grew up knowing love, safety, and truth. Naomi continued speaking out, helping women ask questions, demand clarity, and never accept silence about their own bodies. Years later, Marcus would often stand at his window at night, thinking about how one selfish choice created a chain of pain that almost destroyed everyone. And Naomi would sometimes watch Grace, sleeping and whisper a quiet prayer, because this was not just a story about betrayal. It was a true life lesson, about silence, about truth, about the danger of pride, about the power of resilience, and about how one decision, ignored, delayed, or faced, can change the lives of many forever. This is why this is a story everyone must watch and learn from. Time did not heal everything. It revealed things. Months passed after the night at the hospital, but the silence left behind was louder than the chaos that came before it. Naomi returned to her routine, school drop-offs, work meetings, quiet dinners with Grace, but the echoes of the past followed her everywhere. Grace began having nightmares. She would wake up crying, calling out Naomi's name even when Naomi was right beside her. Sometimes she asked questions Naomi struggled to answer. Why did that lady take me? Was it because I was bad? Will she come back again? Each question cut deeper than the last. Naomi held her daughter tightly and told her the truth in the simplest way a child could understand. "Some people are hurting inside," she said, "and when they don't heal, they hurt others." Grace nodded, but children feel before they understand. Marcus, on the other hand, lived inside regret. He attended court hearings, counseling sessions, and supervised visits with Ethan. The boy was slowly opening up, but trust came in small pieces. One afternoon, as Marcus walked Ethan back to his brother's car, Ethan asked quietly, "Daddy, is Mommy bad?" Marcus knelt down, his throat tight. "Your mommy was sick inside, but that doesn't mean she didn't love you." Ethan thought for a moment. "I still love her." Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. "That's okay." Life did not give easy endings. It gave responsibility. Angela sat alone in her prison cell, staring at the wall. The doctor said her memory would never fully return the same way. Some moments were clear. Others felt like fog. But the guilt, that remained sharp. At night, she replayed everything. The first lie, the first silence, the moment she realized Naomi might not be barren after all. She remembered thinking, if I say nothing, I win. Now there was no victory, only consequences. A prison counsel once asked her, "Do you regret taking the child?" Angela whispered, "I regret not stopping myself earlier." The counselor nodded. That's where most people fail. Not in the final act, but in the small choices before it. Meanwhile, Naomi was invited to speak at a women's health conference. She stood behind the podium, hands steady, voice calm. "I am not here as a victim," she said. "I am here as a warning. Ask questions. Demand clarity. Never let silence decide your future." The room was quiet. Women cried. Some nodded. Some took notes. Naomi went home that night exhausted but fulfilled. For the first time, her pain had purpose beyond survival. Years passed. Grace grew taller, stronger, more confident. She loved reading, loved helping others, and loved asking questions about the world. One evening, while doing homework, she looked up and asked, "Mommy, do you still love Daddy Marcus?" Naomi paused. "That kind of love changes," she said carefully. "It doesn't disappear, but it doesn't control you anymore." Grace nodded thoughtfully. "Is that what forgiveness is?" she asked. Naomi smiled softly. "Yes, it's choosing peace over poison." Marcus rebuilt slowly. He changed jobs. He volunteered with at-risk youth. He showed up consistently for Ethan, even when it hurt. One day, Ethan asked him, "Do you think people can change for real?" Marcus answered honestly, "Only if they face the truth without running." That answer became his new rule for life. On Grace's 12th birthday, Naomi hosted a small gathering. Laughter filled the backyard. Children ran around. Cake was shared. Life looked ordinary. But ordinary had once been impossible. Marcus stood at the gate, unsure if he should enter. Naomi saw him. She walked over. "You can come in," she said, "for Grace." Marcus nodded gratefully. Grace ran to him. "You came." "Of course," he said, smiling. "I wouldn't miss it." For a moment, Naomi watched them together, not as a broken family, not as enemies, but as people who survived something terrible and chose not to pass it forward. That night, after everyone left, Naomi sat alone on the porch. She thought about the parking lot, the scream, the blood, the choices. She realized something important. The worst moment of her life did not define her. What she built after did. Many years later, Naomi received a letter. It was from prison. Angela's handwriting was shaky. "I don't expect forgiveness," the letter read, "but I needed to say this before time runs out. I am sorry, not just for what I did, but for what I chose not to say when it mattered." Naomi folded the letter carefully. She did not respond. Some apologies are not meant to reopen doors, only to close chapters. That evening, Naomi watched Grace studying at the table, focused and bright, full of possibilities, and she understood the final lesson of her life. Truth delayed is damage multiplied. Silence is never neutral. And pain, when faced honestly, can become wisdom. This was not just a story about betrayal. It was a true life lesson, and everyone who hears it carries a responsibility to choose better. The past has a strange way of returning when you least expect it. Naomi learned that on a quiet Tuesday morning, years after she thought everything had finally settled. She was at work, reviewing reports in her office, when her phone buzzed with a number she did not recognize. Normally, she would have ignored it, but something, an unexplainable tightening in her chest, made her answer. "Hello, is this Naomi Brown?" a woman asked, her voice calm but serious. "Yes, speaking. This is Dr. Helen Morris from St. Luke's Medical Center." Naomi straightened in her chair. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause, just a short one, but Naomi felt it stretch. "I'm calling about a patient," the doctor said. "Angela Williams." Naomi closed her eyes. The name still carried weight, even after all these years. "She requested to see you," Dr. Morris continued. "She's been moved to the hospital due to complications related to her previous injury. Her condition is declining." Naomi said nothing. "She specifically asked for you," the doctor repeated. "We can't force you, but I thought you should know." After the call ended, Naomi sat still for a long time. Angela, the woman who took her child, the woman who destroyed her peace, the woman whose silence changed the course of so many lives. Naomi had spent years healing, years choosing calm over chaos, years refusing to let anger define her. And now, The past was knocking again. That evening, Naomi told Grace. Grace was 17 now, tall, thoughtful, with her mother's eyes and her own quiet strength. She listened carefully, not interrupting. "Do you want to go?" Grace asked finally. Naomi sighed. "I don't know." Grace nodded. "You don't owe her anything." "I know," Naomi said softly. "But sometimes closure isn't about owing. It's about choosing." Grace reached across the table and held her mother's hand. "Whatever you choose, I'm proud of you." That night, Naomi barely slept. Memories came back in fragments. The parking lot lights, the scream, Grace's small body shaking in her arms, Angela's face twisted by pain and jealousy. By morning, Naomi had made her decision. Not for Angela, for herself. At the hospital, the halls felt too familiar. Dr. Morris met Naomi near the nurse's station. "She's weak," she said, "but conscious." They walked together in silence. Angela looked smaller than Naomi remembered, thinner, paler, fragile in a way Naomi never imagined possible. When Angela saw her, tears filled her eyes instantly. "You came," she whispered. Naomi stood near the door. "You asked to see me." Angela nodded slowly. "I didn't think you would." Naomi crossed her arms gently. "Why did you?" Angela's hands trembled as they rested on the blanket. "Because I'm running out of time, and I can't carry this with me anymore." Naomi remained quiet. "I knew," Angela said suddenly, "about your condition. Not everything, but enough to know there was hope." Naomi felt her stomach tighten. "I was scared," Angela continued, her voice breaking. "If you found out, I would lose everything. So I said nothing." Naomi took a slow breath. "Your silence cost me my marriage." Angela nodded, tears spilling freely. "I know. It cost me years of believing I was broken," Naomi said. "I know," Angela repeated, her voice barely audible. "It nearly cost my daughter her life," Naomi said, her voice steady but firm. Angela sobbed openly now. "I'm so sorry." The room was heavy with truth. Naomi did not shout. She did not accuse. She simply said, "Why tell me now?" Angela looked at her, eyes filled with fear. "Because I don't want to die carrying a lie." Naomi studied her for a long moment. Then she spoke words that surprised even herself. "I don't forget what you did," Naomi said calmly. "But I forgive myself for carrying this pain for so long." Angela looked up, confused. Naomi continued, "Forgiveness doesn't always mean peace between two people. Sometimes it's just freedom for one." Angela nodded slowly. After a while, Naomi turned to leave. "Naomi," Angela called weakly. Naomi paused. "Please tell your daughter I'm sorry," Angela said. Naomi did not answer. She walked out of the room and down the hallway, her steps steady. Outside, the sun was bright. Too bright for such a heavy moment. When Naomi got home, Grace was waiting. Naomi hugged her daughter tightly. "I chose peace," Naomi whispered. Grace hugged her back. "You always do." But even as Naomi tried to return to her calm life, she did not yet realize that Angela's confession would set off another chain of events, one final ripple from the past that would test everything Naomi believed she had healed. Because the truth, once spoken, does not always rest quietly. Sometimes it demands to be heard by everyone. The truth does not stay quiet once it is spoken. Naomi learned that only 3 days after she visited Angela in the hospital. It started with a letter, not handwritten, not apologetic, not private. It was official. The envelope bore the seal of a legal firm. Naomi stood in her kitchen holding it, her fingers suddenly cold. Grace watched her from the doorway, instantly sensing that something was wrong. "Mom," Grace said softly. "What is it?" Naomi swallowed before answering. "I don't know yet." She opened the letter slowly. As her eyes moved across the page, her heart began to pound harder with every sentence. Angela had given a full recorded statement, not just to the doctors, not just to the police, to a lawyer. In it, she admitted that she had prior knowledge, partial but meaningful, about Naomi's misdiagnosis years ago. She admitted she chose silence. She admitted that her silence influenced Marcus's decision to leave his marriage. And now, that statement had consequences. The letter explained that Marcus had the right to pursue legal action against the clinic for negligence and against Angela's estate for intentional harm. Naomi sank into a chair. She had not gone to the hospital to reopen wounds. She had gone to close them. Grace walked over and sat beside her. "Is it bad?" Naomi hesitated. "It's complicated." Grace frowned. "Does it mean more fighting?" Naomi looked at her daughter carefully. "That depends on what we choose to do next." That evening, Marcus called. His voice sounded strained, like someone who had not slept. "I know you got the letter," he said quietly. Naomi said nothing. "I never asked for this," Marcus continued. "But I can't ignore it either. What was done, it changed everything." Naomi closed her eyes. "Marcus, I didn't come forward for revenge." "I know," he said quickly. "And I'm not asking you to." There was a pause. "I just need to know," Marcus said. "If I move forward, will you stand in the way?" Naomi thought about the years she lost, the nights she cried alone, the child she might have had sooner, the woman she became because of silence. "I won't stand in your way," she said finally. "But I won't lead the charge either." Marcus exhaled. "That's fair." After the call ended, Naomi sat alone for a long time. Peace is not always quiet. Sometimes, peace means letting the truth take its course without carrying on your back. Weeks later, the story surfaced. Not in gossip blogs, not in loud headlines, but in a medical review board hearing. The clinic where Naomi was first diagnosed was investigated. Records were reviewed. Patterns were uncovered. Naomi was not the only woman. There were others. Women told they were barren without proper testing. Women who gave up hope too early. Women whose lives quietly shifted because no one followed protocol. Naomi was asked to testify. She stood in a simple courtroom, dressed plainly, her voice steady. "I am not here for punishment," she said. "I am here so this does not happen again." Her words carried weight. The clinic was fined. Procedures were changed. Mandatory follow-ups were enforced. It did not erase the past, but it protected the future. Angela passed away quietly 2 months later. No drama, no headlines, no final confrontation. Just a life that ended with truth finally spoken, even if it came too late. Ethan attended counseling regularly. One afternoon, he asked Marcus, if Mommy told the truth earlier, would things be different? Marcus looked at his son for a long time before answering. "Yes," he said, "but wishing doesn't change responsibility. Learning does." Ethan nodded slowly. Naomi watched Grace graduate high school the following year. As her daughter walked across the stage, confident and smiling, Naomi felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest. Grace had survived something she should never have endured, and she had grown anyway. That night, Grace hugged her mother tightly. "You taught me something," Grace said. Naomi smiled. "What's that?" "That pain doesn't get the last word," Grace replied. "Choice does." Naomi held her daughter a little longer. She knew there was still one final chapter left in this story. Not one of tragedy, but one of meaning. Because stories like this do not end when the pain stops. They end when the lesson is fully understood. Time softened the sharpest edges, but it never erased the truth. Years passed quietly after the hearings, the apologies, and the final goodbyes. Life did not return to what it once was, because it could not. Instead, it became something new, built carefully, honestly, and with intention. Naomi turned 50 with no grand celebration, just a small dinner at home. Grace cooked. Music played softly in the background. Laughter filled the kitchen. It was enough. Grace was in college now, studying public health. The choice surprised no one who truly knew her. "I want to help fix systems that fail people quietly," she told Naomi one night. Naomi smiled, pride swelling in her chest. That's how real change starts. Marcus lived in a modest house not far away. He never remarried, not because he was afraid of love, but because he finally understood responsibility. He showed up for Ethan, not when it was easy, not when it made him look good, but when it mattered. Ethan grew into a thoughtful young man. He struggled at times, especially with anger and confusion, but therapy and honesty gave him tools Marcus never had growing up. One evening, Ethan asked Marcus a question that had been forming in his heart for years. "Do you think Mom was evil?" Marcus took a long breath. "No," he said. "I think she was afraid, selfish, and hurt, and she never learned how to stop herself before it was too late." Ethan nodded slowly. "I don't want to be like that." Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Then you already aren't." Naomi and Marcus spoke occasionally, not as lovers, not as enemies, as people who shared history and responsibility. One afternoon, years after everything had settled, they met for coffee. Marcus looked older now, softer. "I think about that night sometimes," he said quietly. "The parking lot, the scream." Naomi nodded. "So do I." "I wish I had been braver sooner," Marcus said. Naomi met his eyes. "Bravery after damage still matters. Don't forget that." Marcus smiled faintly. "You've always been stronger than me." Naomi shook her head. "No, I just chose not to stay broken." They parted without bitterness, without regret, only understanding. Months later, Naomi stood in a small auditorium, watching Grace speak at a student conference. Grace stood tall behind the podium. "My mother taught me something important," Grace said clearly. "That silence can harm as much as cruelty. And truth, even when painful, is a responsibility, not a weapon." The audience applauded. Naomi wiped a tear from her cheek. She thought about the younger version of herself, the woman who believed she was broken, the woman who stayed quiet because she thought she had no right to demand more. She wished she could go back and tell her one thing: you were never the problem. But life does not move backward. It teaches forward. That night, Naomi sat alone on her porch, watching the sky darken. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. She thought about Angela, not with anger, not with hatred, but with clarity. Angela was not born a villain. She became one through fear, silence, and refusal to face truth. And that was the real lesson. Not everyone who hurts others does so loudly. Some do it quietly, through omissions, through selfish silence, through choosing comfort over honesty. Naomi whispered a short prayer, not for the past, but for the future. That people would ask more questions. That doctors would explain more carefully. That partners would listen more deeply. That fear would no longer be allowed to decide the fate of others. Grace came outside and sat beside her. "Mom," she said softly, "do you think everything happened for a reason?" Naomi thought carefully before answering. "I don't believe pain is planned," she said. "But I believe what we do after pain gives it meaning." Grace leaned her head on Naomi's shoulder. They sat in silence, comfortable and whole. This was not a story about winning. It was a story about learning. About how one lie can destroy many lives. About how silence can be louder than cruelty. About how forgiveness does not erase responsibility. And about how truth, when finally faced, can save generations. This was a true life story, and everyone who hears it carries a lesson forward. What you choose to hide today may shape someone else's tomorrow. Choose wisely.